She's been working really hard to put this great program together. I want to thank you for your leadership on this webinar, Stephanie. Please join me in welcoming Stephanie Bartram.
Hello, thank you all for coming, first of all, and thank you again to all of our speakers. I'm really excited to hear what everyone has to say tonight. I wanted to start off the evening by introducing CAL FIRE Battalion Chief Shelley Redden. She will be our first speaker tonight. Unfortunately, she's having some technical difficulties with her camera, so we will not be seeing her face, but she has some slides to share with us and a lot of information. So Shelley, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Yes, I do have a presentation for you. Let me know when you can see the screen to make sure everything's okay. So I have a little slide for you guys, and we're just going to kind of go into the introduction and a background more on the fire hazard severity zone maps in the local responsibility areas. So as Stephanie said, my name is Shelley Redden, and I am a battalion chief with CAL FIRE. I'm currently working for the Office of the State Fire Marshal in their land use planning program. So it's kind of a joint marriage, if you will, between CAL FIRE Fire Department and the State Fire Marshal's office, where one side looks really at the structure and the other looks at the lands around it, and making sure those two are very cohesive together. So a little introduction about these maps. Today we're going to just discuss the history and the background of the fire hazard severity zones, the science behind the maps, and then the local requirements that follow those maps. So again, background, a little bit of where these maps came from. So in 1980, the Panorama Fire, it was sorry. I'm sorry, everyone. My phone started ringing. It threw me off. So the fire hazard severity zones, as we all know, they're not new to California. And the Panorama Fire in 1980 was really the beginning of those changes in that state responsibility area. So this fire started in the San Bernardino Mountains. It was pushed by Santa Ana winds, and it burned about 2,800 acres, destroyed 325 structures, and caused 4 fatalities. And in response to this fire, Public Resource Code 4201 mandated CAL FIRE to develop the fire hazard severity zones in state responsibility areas. Now, in 1991, we had the Tunnel Fire, which was 11 years after the Panorama. And as you know, the Tunnel Fire was also called the Oakland Hills Fire, which devastated a community not previously identified as a hazard zone because it was in local responsibility area. Remember, our big push was always a state responsibility area. And then we started seeing these large fires affecting our local responsibility areas as well. So at the time, it was the deadliest and most destructive wildfire on record, burning 1,520 acres, destroying 2,900 structures, and had 25 fatalities. As a result of this fire, the legislators adopted Assembly Bill 337, which is also known as the Bates Bill. So the legislation mandated the director of CAL FIRE to assess the fire hazard severity zones within the local responsibility areas and propose recommendations to identify those very high fire severity zones to the local agencies. Assembly Bill 337 led the Government Code Sections 51-179, which obligates the local authority to mitigate actions. And here's just a little timeline. You can see just a visual. If you go to a website, which I'll share with you guys later, you can see this a little more in depth of exactly when these fires happened and when those legislations came around. So for our fire hazard severity zones, Government Code 51-187 really outlines our responsibility as a state agency. So the state fire marshal is tasked with identifying those hazards statewide, those fire hazard severity zones statewide. And this involves categorizing areas in the state as a moderate, a high, or a very high fire hazard severity zone. So identifying those hazards, we do that so the public officials can identify measures that will reduce the spread and potential intensity of controlled fires that threaten to destroy resources, life, and property. So these maps are more of a tool for long-range planning and development. And then we come to the science and methods behind it. So there's several factors that highlight the current update of the map. So they'll use things like advancements in scientific factors, new local climate and data, enhanced fire assessment modeling. And the process began with legislation from 2022, Assembly Bill 642 and Senate Bill 63, which mandates CAL FIRE to identify the maps and areas within local responsibility areas as a moderate, a high, or a very high fire hazard severity zone. And the updates include improvements in technology, burn probabilities, fire environment, vegetation density, use things like slope, localized fire weather, new firebrand production, and some transport modeling using localized wind and data. So the big takeaway on these maps is the hazard versus the risk. So the hazard severity zone maps evaluate hazard, not risk. So it's very similar to flood zone maps, characterizing areas based on the probability of a particular area being affected by fire rather than outlining the specific impacts. So the hazard is based on the physical condition that create the likelihood and expectation of fire behavior over 50 years without considering any mitigation measures like home hardening, recent wildfire, or any fuel management efforts. The risk is the potential damage a fire can cause due to the area under existing conditions, accounting for any mitigation measures, such as the fuel management, defensible spaces, and ignition-resistant building constructions. So CAL FIRE's goal is to assist local agencies with enhancing life and property. So we work very closely with the building industry, setting various building codes and defensible space requirements. The goal is really not to impede the development, but we just want to make sure that the development aligns with the hazards for that area. Once again, that marriage between the structure and the surrounding environment. So here is a little graphic that I've given to Stephanie, and this is usually a hot topic, and it's actually really good to keep in your back pocket, especially when you're dealing with these new maps in a local responsibility area. So to the left of the map under SRA, you can see that nothing's really changed much. It's because the maps have been around for so long in the SRA. Now in the LRA, everything that was gray there, you can see a lot of new changes in that LRA area due to these maps. So Chapter 7A, that's the hot topic right now, that will become in effect for the high come January 1st of 2026. So for the local agency requirements, it begins with the transmittal of the map from the state fire marshal to that we identify the fire hazard severity zones, and then we give them to the local agency. So this begins a simultaneous timeline. So first, within the first 30 days of receiving the transmittal, local agencies shall make the information available for public review and comment. Pursuant to Government Code 51178.5. And then the second would be 120 days after receiving the recommended maps. The local agencies shall designate moderate, high, and very high fire hazard severity area zones. It's important to note that the local agencies can increase the hazard zones in their maps. They just cannot decrease them. And then the final requirement is submitting to the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection. So within 30 days of adopting a local ordinance, the local agency will then submit a map depicting the adopted fire hazard severity zone, the ordinance of the map adoption, and any items outlined in the regulation through a form that is available on the Board of Forestry's website. And that information will all get kind of scooped up and put into a massive hub. So the entire state now will be mapped appropriately between the SRA and LRA and the levels of those lands. And that's pretty much everything I have. If you want any more information, there was a really great website. It's osfm.fire.ca.gov, and I've given that link also to Stephanie to share later as well. But it has everything on there. It's got all of the SRA information, all the LRA information. It has a map viewer. You can put your address in and see if your area has changed and the zones it has changed from and what it's going to. So it's just a very, very informative, interactive website that we highly recommend everyone taking a look at. That's it. Thank you guys very much for enjoying my slideshow. Would you like me to stop sharing?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes. Thank you so much, Shelley. That was super
course.
helpful.
Of course. Well, thank
I'm-
you.
So, again, if you have questions, I see there's a bunch of questions in the Q&A. We will be answering questions after everyone has after the conversation. Sorry. I'm going to introduce Greg Rubin now. Many of you may remember Greg from our the 2022, 2022, the Slow the Burn symposium or seminar that APLD sponsored. And he's here today to moderate and participate in this discussion. So briefly, Greg is the founder of California's own Native Landscape Design, Inc., and is a licensed design build landscape contractor who has been working in California with native plants for over 30 years. His company has designed more than 800 residential, commercial, and institutional native landscapes in Southern California. Greg has been featured in many prominent publications and media outlets, and he regularly gives presentations and workshops throughout California. In 2018, he was named the Horticulturalist of the Year by the San Diego Horticultural Society. One of Greg's specialties is fire-resistant native landscapes. Greg's designs have experienced 25 fire events without the loss of a single home. His company was selected by the U.S. Navy to conduct a 4-year scientific research project studying the fire-resistant properties of properly designed native landscapes with very positive results. Also, Greg is co-author with Lucy Warren of the California Native Landscape, the Homeowner's Design Guide to Restoring Its Beauty and Balance, and The Drought-Defying California Garden, published by Timber Press. Greg, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and it's all yours.
Oh, guys, it's a real honor to be here. And let me tell you, we've got quite a talent-packed panel tonight, so I think you're in for a treat. What I'll do is I'll go through everybody's bios here to introduce them to you, and then we can get into, I think, who's first? Next page, sorry. Yeah, Stephanie Londrigan will start the presentations. Anyway, so speaking of Stephanie Londrigan, she's a Master of Science in Project Management. Boy, I wish I had that degree. And also a fellow at the American Society of Landscape Architects. It's a big deal. She's the director of the Landscape Architectural Program and the Horticulture and Gardening Program at the UCLA Extension. I need to talk to you guys. Her areas of teaching include natural systems design, green infrastructure stormwater design, community facilitation, water conservation design and installation, and pollinator design. Well, these are all near and dear to my heart. Previously, as the chief landscape architect for the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority, Stephanie worked for 9 years in the wildlife urban interface, WUI, in Los Angeles and Ventura counties, something that many of us are familiar with. Stephanie is one of the co-founders of Altadena Green, a fire response group working to save the private trees in Altadena. And in February 2025, she supported the Blue Ribbon Commission on Fire Safety Recovery that was initiated by the Los Angeles County Supervisor Lindsay Horvath and UCLA Chancellor Julio Frank. Ms. Londrigan is the governor's landscape architect appointee to the State Mining and Geology Board, serving for her third 4-year term from 22 to 26. Stephanie is one of 2 Southern California Council ASLA directors, American Society of Landscape Architects. Ms. Londrigan is a registered licensed landscape architect in the state of California, 4093, and a LEED accredited professional BDNC. She holds a Bachelor of Art from the University of Kentucky in 3D Design and a Master of Science in Project Management from UW Platteville. Okay, and very impressive credentials. Glad to have you, Stephanie. Next, I'm going to talk to you about Sean Maestretti, sorry, landscape medium. I love this. Founder of Studio Petrichor and co-founder of Polly/Anna, Sean is a designer, arborist, educator, and biospheric caretaker. I love that. His work bridges beauty and ecology, creating gardens that heal, inspire, and awaken. A true possibilitarian, he believes in composting our past to nourish our shared future. Great. Next, I have Leigh Adams, queen of all that is wonderful. Leigh is an award-winning educator, artist, and regenerative designer. A gifted storyteller and community weaver, she has inspired thousands through heads-on ecological workshops. Leigh's presence is a balm, B-A-L-M, balm. Her work a beacon for what's possible when we align with nature. Truer words are never said. Okay. Next, I have Valeria Serna. She's a flora, fungi, and fauna advocate, passionate about ecological restoration. She started in marine conservation with the island nation of Kiribati. Wow, that's cool. Currently, she is a Palisades Forestry member, Resilient Palisades board member, and co-leader of the Water Sages team, which focuses on watershed stewardship, rainwater harvesting, bioswale, gray water systems, and California native landscape. She also leads the Commit to Compost campaign as part of the Zero Waste team, which prior to the fires diverted 300 to 500 pounds of food waste per week from the Palisades as part of a community-based healthy soil exchange program. She's a permaculture and soil food web student of Dr. Elaine Ingham and a certified California recycling and resource recovery manager. Also, Valeria has managed properties in Palisades for the past 17 years. Some of the properties she manages burned, despite completing house hardening and defensible space compliance, while other properties did not. Valeria has also managed a large estate transformation, including installation of a 60,000-gallon underground cistern, expansive solar and storage microgrid, and working with Studio Petrichor, the Theodore Payne Foundation, Antonio Sanchez, and countless others to replant the grounds with California native plants. Fantastic. And last but not least, I'm introducing David Card. He's a landscape designer and community leader. He currently serves as president of the Palisades Forestry Committee, which plants and protects trees in public spaces while working to educate the Palisades community about tree-related issues, especially after the January fires. David has also chaired the Palisades Community Council and is a member of the Palisades Rec Center Park Advisory Board. As a landscape designer, David has been involved with the design and rehabilitation of several public spaces, including the George Wolfberg Park at Potrero Canyon, the Grove and Courtyards at the Rustic Canyon Rec Center, and the Simon Meadow at his local YMCA. He has won numerous awards for his design, his leadership, and his advocacy work. Wow. So I guess we'll get started with Stephanie. Go ahead.
Stephanie, you're muted still.
Thank you. Can you see my screen? No.
Yes.
How are we doing?
Yes, we can.
All right, so I will just go through it. So thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to tell the story of Altadena Green, which is an activist group that started right after the fires when we realized the amazing, I would say, resilience of our urban canopy in Altadena. And let's see, I don't seem to be moving, but maybe. How's that? Can you see the second one? Nope. I think I'm sharing the wrong one. Let me try sharing again here. Share. How is this? Are we seeing it again?
Yes. Altitude green saving our past for our future.
And how about it's just not moving? That's probably, hold on, let me try one more time.
Sometimes if the mouse doesn't work, the up and down arrow works and vice versa.
Okay, yes, you're right. So I am thinking I'm gonna try this one. I'm not seeing moving back and forth. That's the problem. And we tried this ahead
And
of
it
time.
worked.
It did. Well, therein we have the problem. So let's see if I can
You can
make
usually,
the,
Stephanie, it's Greg, you can usually hit the space bar, the forward and back keys, those will all move it along also.
all right, so let's try this one more time. And then I am so sorry. This is,
You're also just to speak.
let's try this now. How about I try from the beginning? And now, do you have it? And it's moving?
Yes, now it's moving.
Thank you for your patience. So, Altadena is a terrific historical place. It's up in the foothills and it has always been advocating for trees. It's an amazing area. In fact, they have a great activist history and of protecting trees after they found out that there were lots of removal of very protected trees. They're not a city, but they are a county. And because of this, on January 7th, all of their legendary work was threatened. And it wasn't the only thing that was threatened because this fire burned home to home, structure to structure. And what we saw after this fire was that we had lost many homes and structures, but we really had trees left. This is a before and an after picture, and you can see that we have quite a few trees in the Altadena area, and afterwards, many of these trees were still standing and alive. And here is one. This is fair oaks. I don't know if you all know Altadena, but this is a tree that is quite magnificent. It's an oak tree that is there, and I will be showing you what it looks like today in a minute. But this is the tree that was there after the fires were put out. And here are trees. You see amazing trees still standing, even though we have lost many, many homes. So this was an urban conflagration. It was not a wildfire. And that's an important thing to remember because the fuel in a wildfire is vegetation. And the fuel in this fire were structures. And as you can see, we lost quite a few structures. This is one of the maps that shows that this is the area where the wildfire was. And even in the wildfire, there are homes that survived. But once it got into the urban fire and the fuel of houses, it burned hotter, faster, and with the winds. Here's one of the magnificent oaks that survived. It was burned on the backside by the fires. And here's another oak, and the front yard of this property survived. The next thing that happened was the EPA came in and they started marking trees. And those of us who were up in Altadena were like, what are these tree markings? Because after we had seen how wonderful these trees were, we wanted to know. You can see right here, there's an X on this tree. So we started to see white markings. Those markings were not made by any arborist. They were made by the EPA, and they were only made so that those who were there dealing with the toxic elements and cleaning it up knew that a tree might be a hazard. This is not a do take out. They had a high hazard. This has a medium hazard. And these were the trees that we started to have a problem with, the trees that had the blue dots. When the Army Corps came in, they started to bring in arborists, and those arborists started to go and mark trees that were on properties that had gone with a right of entry. and they started to mark them only with the blue dots of death. Now, these blue dots of death were made supposedly by arborists who knew what they were doing, but we found out they did not. And so what we found is that there were perfectly healthy trees. Our assumption was that these arborists were from out of the state, did not even know the trees. We saw many misidentified trees, and this was marked as because it had an X. So some of these arborists were not even reassessing these trees. They were assuming the white marks were the assessment. Now, this is really troubling. Here are some terrific redwood trees that were ready and healthy, and they were marked for removal. So what we saw these blue dots. We went everywhere. I'm sorry, we were driving around like crazy. And we ended up starting Altadena Green. There were 6 of us. We decided we had to start this and we had to become activists. We had to become activated. We went out with 20 arborists who volunteered on weekends to go with us and to reassess trees. We looked at trees on 60 properties, and we found that the majority of these trees had both been misidentified and were viable to live. So why would we save old trees? Well, many of these trees have lived through many fires. Not only that, these mature trees produce enough oxygen to keep us alive for a very long time. There are many benefits that trees provide, and if we replace these trees with smaller trees, it will take more than our lifetime and more than even our children's lifetimes for them to start producing the benefits that they are able to produce right now. So our goals were to reduce the removal of trees that might otherwise recover and to educate homeowners, because we were not going after the street trees. We were trying to let the homeowners know what was going on because they didn't have neighbors anymore. None of the homeowners knew what was going on. And the Corps was not telling everybody, and neither was the county. So that was part of what we were doing. What we did is we found that many, many trees protect homes. Many homes were survived because the trees filtered the embers. So then we started having people putting up signs saying, do not cut our trees, because the Corps was going through doing a demolition and then removing viable trees because there was no other option for owners. And it's a complicated decision because, there are things that the Corps had to do, and safety of the people who were in there was instrumental and important. And the property owner has the right to keep their tree or to let it go. But that was not what was happening. So this was what we had. We had the blue dots of death. And after meeting with LA County Supervisor Barger's office and the Corps, we got a new tree marking. And we were able to, for the first time in the history of any of the Corps' fire work and recovery, to get a waiver so that you could keep your tree if you wanted to take the risk and to allow it to recover in the 2 years that typically 2 to 3 years in which an oak tree will recover are many of these trees. So the waiver was finally made available. It took us about a month to get through all of the paperwork, to get a paperwork. But what was exciting about it is that people started to save their trees and they were happy. But what did Altadena Green do in this? And this is our little story, is we worked with the Army Corps of Engineers. We worked with LA County and we got the waiver for tree retention. We also provided resources and education about trees and fire recovery to owners, to property owners. And also what's exciting is we did it to the arborists who were hired by the Corps. We spent weekends training the new arborists as to what kind of trees live in Southern California and how to do a tree risk assessment. And this was all pro bono because we had not yet become a 501c3, but we worked with the UC cooperative extension to provide this post-fire tree assessment and training the local arborists. This May, we became a 501c3 through a fiscal sponsor. We are now applying for grants so that we can help water the trees that we're trying to save. Now, we're still losing many viable trees. We're still needing education and outreach. Last week, we lost 25 oaks. And let me tell you, these were magnificent trees. And so we have many, many properties that are still going through the phase 2 that we have work to do on. But there is hope because some of Altadena's finest are still standing. And this is the tree that last Friday was there on Fair Oaks that I'd shown you at the very beginning, and it's doing magnificently. And you can also see, even in the back here, we're still saving some trees. And so thank you so much for letting me talk about what we've done. If you would like more information about altadenagreen.org, please go to our website, and I'll be happy to answer questions at the end of this, and I look forward to everyone else's presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, so next, that was very informative, and you are doing magnificent work there in an area that has been kind of neglected and poorly understood. And there's nothing like saving a mature tree, right, Stephanie?
Nothing like it.
Yeah. So we're going to move to Sean now, who is the landscape medium. And go ahead, if you're ready, Sean, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. And Stephanie, I love you so much. Sorry, I started to get emotional during your presentation because I moved up to Altadena because of the trees. Sorry, guys. You know, it hasn't been easy. You know, Lee and I both lost our homes, and you know, we're just so happy that folks like Stephanie and this group are out there being activists, and when we, you know, can't do as much as we'd like to do. Reestablishing a home and trying to keep a business running, 2 businesses and all that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for seeing us and hearing us today. And APLD, thank you for the invitation to speak. Can everybody see the screen? Yeah, okay, good. We come to you not just as landscape designers, but as people who have prepared for and lived inside a firestorm. For Lee, multiple firestorms. Both Lee's and my homes were lost. What was fascinating to witness is that the fire stopped on our block at my home at Purple Sage Lane. Before we go any further, we want to be super clear that we are not claiming to have all the solutions, but we do have evidence, and evidence that took years to build. The garden at Studio Petrichor and many of our clients' gardens were designed through whole systems thinking. These landscapes didn't come from a manual. They emerged from years of observation, listening, and collaboration with the land, with the waters, with the seasons. And most importantly, through returning carbon to the soil to increase water retention and resilience. I just want to make sure you can see this. This was the last video I took that day. And I got a lot of video footage. This was the moment that I witnessed the house ignite the tree, that 85-year-old podocarpus tree. And in the front of the house, a tree along with the other 2 large trees on my property that were stopping embers and slowing down the wind. And you'll notice that that tree is also right there in zone 0. And it was the insurance company that wanted us to take that tree down, but we refused and got a new insurance company. So let me paint a picture. Did we have roof sprinklers? Yes. Did we pre-burn most of our fences and by using a Japanese method called shosugiban? Yes. Did my husband return at 6:30 a.m. to risk his life, watering our home and our neighbor's fence and home? Yes. Did we communicate with our other neighbors, guiding them through the chaos so that they could return and slow the fire even further? Yes. Just like rainwater harvesting, soil building, and fire adaptive plantings, this was whole systems thinking in action. The houses to the south and the west of us are all standing. Too often, the critical narrative tells us clear the vegetation, create defensible space, remove the fuel. But when did we start seeing nature only as fuel? When did we forget that plants, trees, and soil are what breathe life into this place? The term firescaping, I was thinking about this the other day, as it's commonly used, holds the frequency of blame, fear, and separation. It implies that landscapes are dangerous by default, that they must be managed, modified, even removed. What if we shifted the language? Say, instead of defensible space, we could say something like resilient home ecosystem. Instead of fuel modification, we could say something like fire adaptive plantings. Instead of vegetation clearance, we could say ecological stewardship, or better yet, tending the wild, a sacred practice that's been a part of this region for thousands of years. This isn't just semantics. Language shapes our reality. Words shape action. If we speak in fear, we design from fear. If we speak in relationship, we design for life. So let's be honest. In the Eaton fire, it wasn't the plants that ignited my home. It was open vents that invited embers in, a gas line that couldn't shut itself off, the neighbor's wooden fence that acted as a fire highway between our structures. These are the real vulnerabilities, and yet our policies continue to focus on removing plants, ignoring the evidence. The data is clear. Most homes are lost to embers, not direct flame. Structure-to-structure ignition is the main driver of urban fire spread, and the greatest resilience comes from how we build, where we build, and how we relate to the land around us. We are not helpless. For 6 years, I've been preparing my home for both drought and fire through an ongoing relationship with the landscape. It's never been about control. It's always been about care, engagement, a deeper listening. Sorry, I've been go through the photos. A deeper listening to place. So I ask all of us today, what would it mean to move from a firefighting mentality to a fire stewarding consciousness? What if resilience isn't about clearing space, but making space for relationship, for memory, for long-term ecological health? Because this is not a one-size-fits-all problem. Altadena is not Sierra Madre. My property is not the same as Lee's. Each community and parcel is different and unique, and our solutions must be place-based, community-driven, and emergent, like this creeping snowberry. What if we stopped writing more rules that ignore reality and started building more homes, gardens, and neighborhoods that work with the wisdom of fire, wind, water, nature? So we recently submitted a letter to the Board of Forestry, CAL FIRE, and other agencies that you can read here. I'll put it into the chat on our response to Zone Zero and rethinking resilience in fire-prone communities. And more writing is in the works, I promise you. If you're interested, you can sign up for our newsletter at studiopetrichor.com. I promise you it will be juicy and will be paradigm shifting. So thank you so much. Lee, did you want to say something? Thank you for holding space for me today.
I just want to say that the work that we're doing, that Sean's speaking about, and that passion is what we feel for every landscape. And this has just activated an intention to make sure we share this information with as many people as possible. And really grateful to you for being here, listening, and carry this with you. So thank you.
And we want you to know that the house may be gone, but the garden is in full bloom and was recently in the LA Times.
And it's gorgeous.
So fire didn't touch this garden, and it's a dry garden. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sean and Lee. You guys really moved me. I love the work you're doing. And I think one of the really interesting things in this heartbreaking scenario is just how green so much of the vegetation remained. The same vegetation they want to blame for burning down our homes, right? So I hope you can stick around for the panel discussion, because that's an area I want to talk about with you guys. Thank you. Let's go to Valeria now. I love that she's a flora, fungal, and fauna advocate. I can't wait to hear her presentation. Go ahead, Valeria, if you're ready.
Stephanie, do you have those photos?
I do. Hang on.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Five.
And I'm mostly going to we're gonna go over some, yeah. I'm not a landscape designer. I am not an expert in any degree. I am a passionate, enthusiast of the planet. Okay, we're starting there. So this was 11/11 on Tuesday, January 5th, and this was me as I was leaving the Palisades. The hillsides behind some of the homes that I manage were immediately caught fire. The conversation around the wildlands, and the defendable space and home hardening really hit home, because in 2019, I had that specific trail was lush and full of 5 or 6 old, eucalyptus trees. And in the 2019 fire that was just down the road, Cavalry, with the rhetoric that was going on and not being an expert and having the language that was, you have to remove oaks, you have to remove eucalyptus, you need to create that defendable space between the conversations of the state park, the fire department. So I did just that. And what this used to be a microforest little climate was now covered in not that hillside, but the trail. Maybe we can move on to the next slide, please. Because that area was very lush, and this is the other side of that. That home that was on the trail actually ended up burning, and I've had numerous conversations where I felt so guilty when I cut those trees down. I felt so guilty. I still feel terrible, because the assumption was that if you remove these eucalyptus, these fire-prone trees, you're going to have more defendable space. And I know differently now. I feel very differently now. What came up was mustard and castor bean. So here we have the other side of that area where we've created our defendable space. We put all of our, we had fire hydrants, we had everything. But in that calamity, when you have 80 to 100-mile-an-hour winds, there's nothing that one can do to kind of stop it. You are just in emergency. You make sure that the neighbors and their elders get out, that you get out. And we're a very narrow road, so we have to, mitigate all the homes and the cars. So maybe, Steph, if you can go to the next slide, please. So this is the backside from the cameras on the right, or sorry, on the left. You'll see the smoke. I think this was coming in. That wood structure, I don't know if you can kind of zoom in, that was the wooden fence. And that area used to be lush, full of trees. But again, the wood fence caught fire. This area was all covered in, just immediately engulfed in flames. The photo of the pool on the other side is, I came back days later and we were putting out hotspots, and this is what part of that garden looks like. You can see the coral tree looks, looks in, a little bit of bad shape, but it's there. A lot of the other vegetation. This is an area that I believe Mary Lee Coleman is here from Urban Water Group. They designed a 60,000 gallon cistern in 2012, and that's been what we've been irrigating this garden with. And we used the pool water to try to maintain that hydration. The week before, we were already irrigating because we had warnings of the Santa Ana winds. Next slide. When I went back January 11th, this was the scene that I saw. And this, for all the devastation of the homes, but this really hurt. Just thinking of all the animals, thinking of all the loss, just the incredible loss. And it's coming back in a different way now. But yeah, this is a longstanding store that I hope, we'll see how it turns out. Next slide, Stephanie. Those were some of the hotspots I was putting out. This is an area that we had been mulching, and we had created a hugel berm, and you can see that house is still standing. It has some trees around it, but for the most part, it had been cleared, and we had done a compost hugel system, thanks to Sean and Lee. That area burned, but it burned really clean. I don't know what the science or what that kind of will tell, but that whole wood structure, all the trees surrounding it really are still there and viable. So, again, it's just the beauty of the planet and nature and how it heals. Next slide, Stephanie. That home, there's our compost system, but that home is trees and vegetation, and everyone thought that would be one of the homes that would go, but it's still there. It's surrounded by all these trees, a lot of eucalyptus, a lot of elderberries, and it's, we say it's a miracle because it's one of the original homes that is still standing, that's all wood, has its creeks and everything. But the homeowners are just overjoyed because they have a place to come home to after, living there for over 60 years. And our little compost system, which made it, I wanted to highlight that healthy soils that we've been working on. I think that as, Sean creating carbon healthy soils, that was instrumental in the garden, I feel, in all the areas, having that relationship with the plant, with the nature. Next slide. Yeah. Railroad ties were when I basically smoldering days after and up to a week. So we were putting out hot spots, and that's what you see on that side. They were actually laddering up to the home. The trees and everything, the vegetation around it, as you can tell, was still very green, but trying to put out these, a slow burn was really challenging because in certain areas, the ground was so hot, it just retained that heat, the heat. You can go to the next slide. Well, it's the same. Yeah, thank you. And here we have basically what was a screen of oleander and different privet and different vines that, again, I think that, they were hydrated, but they did the beautiful thing because that house that you see there had a cracked window. It had, dual pane glass, but the house is standing, nothing went in. I think that those plants really held up and were our heroes because a lot of this vegetation, a lot of these, plants actually, were the ember catchers. Next slide, Stephanie. And so our neighbor who loves roses and has a beautiful lush rose garden, I saw this 4 or 5 days after the fire, and I just wanted to take that photo because amongst everything that was going on, life finds beauty, and it was there. It was lush and green. And then this is the photo directly across are the silk oaks, which, you know, received extensive damage from a wood fence that was there. And you'll see photos later. And, you know, that hurt the trees, that hurt the vegetation. The trees did not hurt. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. The trees didn't, the trees weren't catching fire. It was really our structures, our man-made structures that were really the, you know, the culprits. This is an area that I had been working on, putting in more natives and doing it in stages. And I intended, it's about 1,000 feet, but I got this area done, and you can see the difference between the natives. This is a Pacific wax myrtle and some island mallow versus the oleanders that, unfortunately, you know, weren't as weren't so fire resistant. And you can go to the next slide. This is that bamboo in front of the house. There was some ivy and other things that we had been working on transitioning. But again, like a lot of this house was, it's very well hardened. It has a metal roof. We have a rainwater capture system that I believe Mary Lou Coleman is on here. So it all kind of integrates into the back garden. We've had, this is a music studio, so it has more than dual pane glass. It has like 5 layers, but that's because of acoustics and sounds. It has a, you know, metal roof. It has, you know, shutters that go down. But again, like the vegetation that you see there days after, you know, still very lush. And we have palm trees, so that's a conversation that I'm having with the homeowner, because they are very adamant about their palm trees. But given everything, like, you know, January 11th or 12th when I was there, when this photo was taken, yeah, they were still there. And our chirimoya tree that has been benevolently neglected over years is a hardy tree that we just, you know, compost and water every now and then. But this was days after the fire, looking, you know, fairly hurt, but it's come back. It's fruited. We've enjoyed it. So again, just that resilience of nature. And the next slide, Stephanie. Again, some of the beauty that comes out right away after the fires, and our stinging nettle that was really, for me, like a sign of healing. And that, you know, the soil coming, bringing life, and you know, having all of the just the properties to regenerate. Next, yeah. This is some of the fungi that was coming up. It's Pyronema. And this is one of we're looking into it as a fire follower and how that expands and maybe might be used in some like remediation, some healing of the soil. And in this area here, you'll see the wood deck, which caught next to the to the vegetation that was the plants that were there. But the house is still standing. So that house is surrounded by eucalyptus. So it's very, we trimmed them. We had them cleaned up in November, December. Again, we well maintained, well hydrated, and an all wood structure is still there. So yeah, you can go next slide. This is again those areas of the silk oaks where the wood fence, you know, burned, but the trees were there, and you can kind of see what the with the oleanders just didn't survive. The back of that hillside of that house that's all wood, that was one of the original homes on this hillside, surrounded by eucalyptus and various other native plants. You know, you could kind of make it out. It's there. And then the other clear path, there's like a lemon grove, lemon trees. And again, you see grasses coming back, you know, within a month after, so that, you know, the lupins that have been popping up have been beautiful. All of the native plants that kind of have come back, you know, in the aftermath. And this, which I believe was one of the original water lines made out of clay, and all of the the nasturtiums, I found it really interesting I'd never seen that on the hillside. So I thought it was you know, the ceanothus that has been coming back, I was showing the homeowner, like, as we transition this garden into more natives, it used to be this very lush tropical botanic garden, and we've been adapting to more natives, to more drought tolerant. Just the beauty that is here, the lupins, the ceanothus, all of the vibrant colors. And our fungi followers, they're popping up everywhere. They've been really, in areas that we wouldn't expect. We have a lot of hugelberms, so we have different mushrooms that are coming up and really like helping and decomposing and healing the soil and adding carbon. And here, this is me I went on a walk in that back of the hillside. It's coming back, but you see a lot of that oat straw, so the invasives are unfortunately coming back. So I really need to work on, mitigating that and putting, more care. I am part of the SoCal Stop Artificial Turf Task Force, and here, the fact that we would plant or that we would have artificial turf in any setting, it just breaks my heart. And I wanted to, highlight here how it burns and it melts, and it should never be included in any sort of landscape or really anywhere. It doesn't belong in our planet. Not that no purpose that I can think of, but it's very toxic. It's crown rubber. Yeah, I don't think that we should have it in any place here. So just to point out how it's made out of petrochemicals, and yeah, we don't really need that especially in any sort of fire prone or anywhere where you're going to have your kids, your families play. It's not a flooring or anything that we should be walking on or entertaining on. And this, sorry, the slide's a little bit. Well, so the ducks, the mallards, speaking of life coming back, I said this is the world's largest bird bath because it's, we have a lot of birds that come here, and you can see in the background that the vegetation is, hardy. We've continued to irrigate. I work with a lot of you. I'm not an expert. I try to take care of people's homes to the best that I can. And we have our visitors that constantly come here, and this is their home, the planet, the birds. I say this is a sound garden because it's a music studio. It's also, a lot of the birds that we hear, a lot of nature, as well as just healing. It's a healing space, as our planet is. And then, unfortunately, this photo of the trees, speaking to, with Stephanie Landrigan, we were working on a lot of this that tried to stop a lot of the tree removal within the community in the Palisades. Unfortunately, they're moving, very fast, and we are also signing tree waivers and trying to do as much as we can to prevent that, because we need to preserve our urban canopy. We need to preserve our canopy throughout the planet and really give the trees and the vegetation a time to recover. And Stephanie, is there another?
Yeah, that's the last slide.
That's the last one?
Yeah,
Okay.
I wasn't able to get your videos on here. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. That's it. Well, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for giving me the space to present.
Valeria, I want to thank you for such an insightful and what's the word? Attention to detail that you shared with us. I really appreciated the photo of the native plants, the bright green native plants next to the not so green oleanders. And I'm looking forward to our panel discussion because I think this has real relevance to all of what we're trying to achieve here and what really goes on in these firestorms. So thank you. Great job. Thank you. By the way, I love that Humboldt lily behind you. All right. Thank you very much, Valeria. We'll see you in the panel discussion. Okay. And then our final speaker is David Card, and who is a landscape designer, community leader, and very involved with the understanding of fire ecology and how it affects our communities. David, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm the president of the Palisades Forestry Committee. That's a committee that is designed to plant trees in public spaces, primarily street trees, but also in several of our parks. We have two LA City recreation centers in the Palisades, and I'm on the board of one of them. And I'm basically a landscape designer that has retired from private practice, but that was after a 25-year career as a bank lawyer. So I was one of the older students in one of Stephanie's classes at UCLA Extension, but I really enjoyed the switch in careers. And let's go to the next slide, please. Here's a picture that I took just as we were running to the car. We had about 15-20 minutes notice. The fire originated about half mile up the ridge. We're one ridge east of where Valeria is. And the fire was very reminiscent of the 1978 fire that burned from, I think it was either Mandeville or all the way at the 405, and with Santa Ana winds blew very strong and blew the fire all the way to the beach in Malibu and the Palisades. And that 78 fire, the Governor Reagan was living in the Palisades, and a valiant effort was made to save his house, but no fire truck came to our ridge at all. They skipped our little ridge, and this looks exactly like the 78 fire, except that this photo is this year's fire, and basically came down the ridge and around the bowl at the end of this cul-de-sac. And we bought the house in spring of 78. The 78 fire was in October. It burned about, I guess about a dozen houses in the Palisades. Not a huge, nowhere near the devastation of this fire, but it also primarily affected me and my family because it burned down our church. It burned down St. Matthew's Episcopal Church in one of the canyons just below our house. And I got on the building committee and made sure that the new church, the old church was a Quincy Jones A-frame. It was gorgeous, tiny little chapel kind of church. And it had wood shingles, and it was all wood. And a fireball came down and exploded in flames. We in the building committee made sure that we got cement tile that looked like slate, and we have very thick stucco, and no fire damage to the church, although there was some damage this year to the school and some of the outer buildings. In any event, you can see here some of the do's and don'ts. Let's stay on this one. One is that 2 years ago, we had to decide whether to invest some of our extra money in solar or invest in hardy board concrete siding. We decided on the latter. And so what you're looking at is what used to be plywood and batten, the developer's favorite way of building houses. And it's now concrete siding, including the eaves. We replaced the wooden deck that was falling apart at the time, and with a fire-rated hardwood from Indonesia. And so that stood up very well too. The don't that you see here is the arbor with the rose, climbing rose, and also the fence that leads to it. I love my picket fence that I made out of split rails, and I built that arbor, but that's going to be one of the first things that's going to go when we get around to it, after we remediate the soot and toxic damage that got inside the house. The other thing you'll notice is that behind the scubai and the Japanese lantern that my father-in-law smuggled in his machine tool business, importing huge machine tools from Japan. I planted under the deck and alongside that garage wall that you're looking at with clivia, mainly almost all clivia, very high water content. It's the kind of thing that would have to be pulled out if Zone 0 were enforced, but no fire damage there at all under the deck or up against the house. There's a couple other shrubs there, but it's almost 90% clivia, and they look great when they all bloom at once. Let's go to the next one, please. This is a view from the top where you saw the flames, and you can look down on our little cul-de-sac. It's 1 block long. We bought in '78 because it's one of the only flat streets in the mountains. And we had one 4-year-old boy, and one was born in 1978. So we moved in the spring, and by the fall, the '78 fire occurred. And that's when I built some, I made sure that I complied from then on with all of the fire requirements for brush clearance, even though there wasn't that much brush. It was all ornamentals and a forest behind our hill. On our hill, you'll see my house is the one right in front of that big tree on the right. That big tree was a 15-gallon redwood that I planted about 40 years ago. And it's loving all the overwatering that I give it. And we're right at the edge of the fog belt, so it gets some of the fog that redwoods love. They're certainly not native to Southern California, but some of us love them. And that one withstood and probably protected to some extent the house behind it. You'll see that my house is standing, the house next to me, the one behind the redwood is standing. All the houses below on the right and underneath are standing. It's 5 houses on the left across the street from us that all burned to the ground, and one further down the street on the right burned as well. And half those people are going to build back. The other half can't afford to or don't want to live in on the edge of the chaparral anymore. So we're in the midst of, we're gonna have lots of construction on this block. All right, you'll see some of the in the foreground, the native chaparral has burned, a lot of it, but you also see in the background a lot of trees, as was pointed out in earlier slideshows. A lot of the trees did very well. So let's turn to the next one. That's the front of the house on the right. There's the big redwood. If I had lifted the camera up, you might have seen the whole thing. You'll see a veritable forest on my back slope that goes all the way up to those Aleppo pines that you see that are trimmed way up. And on the right, you'll see the Italian stone pines that we have 2 or 3 of those, and they are very full. We just had them pruned so that the wind can go through them a little bit more. And you'll see, it's hard to see, but there's a mature sycamore on the lower back slope. There's a growing liquid amber in front of that redwood tree along the fence line. And there's about 3 or 4 native red buds, which I love, that I planted on the front slope. The front slope also has some, and let me get the name right, Aristea eclonii, Little John, or small blue stars. That is a highly invasive plant that just took over my front slope. So I gave up and let it take over the whole front slope, and it's done very well in this fire. No ember burned any of it, and it's spectacular when it blooms with big sprays of dark blue flowers. I don't recommend it because, and I would never have planted it because we're so close to the chaparral, but, and it does seed freely. It explodes with its seeds. You'll also notice that along with the concrete siding, I replaced the tilt-up original plywood garage door with a metal door that rolls up. I joined the modern age with a roll-up finally. And you get an idea of how dense that forest is on my back slope. One of the things I decided long ago was I wanted to see green on my slope. Everybody else just weed whacks their slope and does very little irrigation on their slope. Mine is 100% irrigated, and I keep it that way. And when I've talked to the fire inspectors that come around for brush clearance, they said that as long as you keep it well hydrated and irrigated, and you do the maintenance on those trees that you're supposed to, pruning them up so there's few fire ladders or any fire ladders, you're going to be okay. So let's go. And also, you'll notice that some of those trees are deciduous. I love deciduous trees. They show the seasons. The Boston ivy on the front slumpstone I planted because I hate slumpstone, and I wanted to cover that up. And the Boston ivy does a great job of that. You'll see that on the back, this is the low back slope of my house. You can see the neighbor's property on the other side. He had just planted grapevines in 3 or 4 rows across his slope. They burned. I don't know if they'll come back. I don't think they will. And you'll see that I originally planted Vinca major and star jasmine on the slope way back in the 80s. And all of it was taken over by the neighbor on the left who had the traditional honeysuckle, the Japanese honeysuckle. And that honeysuckle came through the fence and basically took over half the hillside. And you can see where above the honeysuckle, you'll see that there's a burn scar, and about, I'd say, half of the hillside ground cover burned in the fire, but none of the trees burned in the fire. You'll see the wind damage is what did the damage to the trees. Go back one more. There we go. You'll see the wind blew some redwood branches down that's leaning on the light string. You'll see also behind the Magnolia solangiana, and that is a Monrovia hybrid called, let's see, where is it? I have it, called Black Tulip, that they were pushing a couple of years ago. And it's really a surprising bright spot. Another bright spot was from Nuccio's nursery in Altadena, one of my favorite nurseries. A lot of all the camellias that you see below the wall there, it's not a retaining wall, it's a water drainage wall. But anyway, all of the camellias that I buy are from Nuccio's. We hope it stays longer but it's up for sale and unfortunately may be redeveloped in Altadena. Go back again one more time, just one more point I want to make. The big branch that you see on the upper right that's on the ground, there were 2 mature Aleppo pines. You can see the trunk of one of them. The wind blew that big limb down and made hangers of others of the same size. This is about a 12-inch diameter at the connection to the trunk. And because I have crisscross trails on the hillside that I designed for me, for my safety, but also for my grandkids, I didn't want to take any chances with those big limbs. So we got rid of the hanging limbs. We trimmed up the trees even more. And a couple of those big Aleppo pines we just took all the way down because they were in the winds that we had there. They were jeopardizing the safety of the homes, my home and the neighbor's home next door. They were so big and tall. This is taken from, you can see my split rail picket fence. This is directly across the street. You see the barren hillsides. The only benefit of those barren hillsides is that we now see the rock outcroppings. You can't see much here, but there are some gorgeous rock outcroppings that we only see when there's a fire on the hillside. You see all the trees across the canyon that have survived. And you'll see the neighbor directly across the street got a visit from Kirkland, Washington Fire Department, and they were just there to help them dig out and saw out a ground safe that had very valuable stuff in it. And they were assisting the neighbor with that. And while they were doing that, smoke started coming up from their back slope, and it was embers had reignited, and were fortunately the fire department was there to put it out on the spot. But there are flare-ups, and this was on the 18th of January when this picture was taken, when the flare-up happened, which is 11 days after the actual fire came through. And I just wanted to say that as Valeria and I are both members of the Palisades Forestry Committee. I run it, and it was established to carry on the planting of street trees in the Palisades. Unfortunately, because we're so tree wealthy in terms of abundance of trees in the Palisades, we no longer get free street trees from Cal Plants. And so we had to convert to a 501c3, and we're in the process of trying to raise money so we can continue our mission of planting street trees. But in the meanwhile, we have been planting park trees, and we are fortunate to have 2 rec centers, and we are generously allowed to plant freely in the historic eucalyptus grove, the 1887 forestry station that has been originally imported the eucalyptus to California from Australia in order to see if they would grow in our climate, which of course they do, and so that they could be farmed for lumber and railroad ties, and of course some of the movers and shakers like Abbott Kinney and Arcadia Bandini and others in San Francisco as well imported those, and that's why you see so many, because those folks were the Johnny Appleseeds of eucalyptus, and the whole canyon of Rustic in Santa Monica Canyon was part of that forestry station. We'd still maintain about a half block worth of eucalyptus grove as basically an arboretum of dozens and dozens of different species. And we were able to save it from destruction by the drought by breaking up the soil, by laying irrigation pipe, crisscross that what's left of the grove with irrigation pipe and started irrigating them so that they stopped dying and began to thrive. It's also the location of the historic Uplifters Club, which was in the 20s, 30s, and was the hub of bohemian lifestyle of the rich and famous of Los Angeles, similar to the Bohemian Grove, but not on that scale, but still, famous people like Walt Disney and the author of the Wizard of Oz books, and Will Rogers, and movie stars and business people, railroad barons and so on, were part of that club. That club burned down, of course, in a fire and was rebuilt in concrete. That building is now the rec center in Rustic Canyon. And as part of the history of the Grove, we have probably the oldest Dioun spinulosum, which looks like a palm tree, but it's a cycad that's grown maybe 20 feet tall, and it's still living, and it's well over 100 years old. And that's one of the unique things in the Palisades that we have in terms of trees. It's really not a tree.
David, Is there any last words you'd like to share with us? Thank you
Last
so
word
much.
is that we plagiarized the heck out of Altadena Green's website and created our own and added some more of our own stuff. So Palisades Forestry Committee has a website at www.palisadesforestry.org. And we got the first half of it up, and we are still in the early stages. We have another half that I've drafted in text, but since we're all volunteers and we're not paying anybody to do this website, we're doing it ourselves. We're a little slow on the draw, but we got the important stuff up, like how to get a waiver so you can save your tree, all the other things you can do to save your tree, and that sort of thing. So we are doing as much as we can in the Palisades to get the word out. I'm on the community council, so every meeting I have an opportunity to talk about trees in the Palisades. I'm also on that park advisory board. A lot of trees burned in the park at Palisades Rec Center, and we're trying to get more trees put back in there. That's it.
Thank you so much, David. Greg, do you want to take over and start the discussion, or do we want to introduce our special guest?
Oh, I want to introduce our special guest.
All right,
Guys,
take it away.
thank you. I'm really honored and I'm so excited to have a special guest join our esteemed panel here. And it really is esteemed, guys. And that is Rick Halsey from the California Chaparral Institute. And I'm gonna kind of look at his bio here too, so he doesn't get mad at me because I forgot something. But I've known Rick, oh, geez, probably 20 to 22 years. And he and I have been kind of partners in crime when it comes to, when it comes to trying to prevent the absolute destruction of our native chaparral and plant communities in general, to stop the misconceptions, to stop the blame, and to really educate the public. And I mean, how we save our natural ecosystems. And for God's sakes, that's part of the reason we moved to California in the first place, isn't it? So he, I believe, was a teacher of the year for the Poway School District, if not San Diego. And he taught high school biology, and he's written a lot of research papers, a very well regarded book called Fire, Chaparral, and Survival in Southern California. Yes, fantastic book, guys. You got to pick it up if you don't have it already. Way ahead of its time. And he was a film producer in Hollywood. I remember this really cool movie that he produced that was really well regarded also. And he gives hundreds and hundreds of presentations throughout Southern California. And he works with the San Diego Museum of Natural History, where he continues to teach natural history through the state. He founded and has been leading the Chaparral Naturalist Certification Program, which is just a fantastic program, since 2015. And very recently, the Chaparral Institute, through Rick, won in the appellate courts in their lawsuit with CAL FIRE. I don't want to malign CAL FIRE per se. They have a job to do. They have directives to carry out. A lot of this stuff is not their fault, quote unquote. But there were some really, really salient points, and he brought up as far as habitat clearance, changing to type conversion, that habitat clearance can actually increase the flammability of the landscape, that more analysis is needed. And that this really need to go through a more of a process, an approval process. So anyway, Rick has done some really good work. He's a big deal. So thank you, Rick, and for joining the discussion here. And I'm just honored and tickled that everybody's here tonight. This is just fabulous. I think I'm going to start with a question, Stephanie. So I'm curious, did any of you guys see the newspaper article in the LA Times? I think it was on Sunday or Monday that it came out. It was about how plants were saving homes. I think David hit the nail on the head beautifully on that. I think we're all kind of like, it's really cool because we're coming at it from different directions, but we're sort of all kind of converging on the same spot, the same approach. I think we're all very consistent about this. So did anybody happen to catch that article? I think Rick did. Anybody else?
I just put it in the chat.
Thank you for putting it in the chat. It was well done. Well done. It's great. You know, Rick and I and others on this panel have been advocating for this for decades. And it's wonderful to see it come from a little different source that is comprised of PhD scientists. Okay. So it's amazing. Actually, I think things are really starting to change, you guys, pretty quickly here. And it's absolutely wonderful. And along those lines, one of the things you notice in all your slides is the amount of standing green vegetation in all these communities. And I'd just be curious to get the discussion started about what the significance of that is to you, why that is, and how it may actually perhaps increase fire resistance. Stephanie? Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Greg, and I'd love to hear Rick's comments on this, but I think that you have seen in areas that were urbanized, the fact that we have a lot of irrigated vegetation, and trees that have life in them are going to be far more resilient than some that are truly drought stressed. You may see in some of our forests far less survivors, but you might see them recover quickly. But we have, when we have this urban conflagration come in, the embers that are coming through will actually settle on the most advantageous fuel, which are the homes. And as Sean said, it was coming in through all of the vents. And once it starts interior of your house, it is very difficult to battle that. And so, yes, I am a true believer in vegetative barriers and in the fact that we have vegetation that it is a protection in many, many ways. But it is well-maintained vegetation, and I think that's important to emphasize.
I agree 100%. And I had a question for you too, a follow-up question. When you're going out there and you're seeing all these condemned trees, which are just fine, okay, and you said they brought in somebody from out of state to do the assessments and they didn't even know what trees they were. Did those people also have a contract to remove those trees? Was there any kind of a little bit of a conflict and interest there? I'm just kind of curious because I see it a lot. I'm not condemning arborists, but I'm just saying, you see it every now and then.
Well, the Army Corps went out to bid nationally, and so they take the lowest bidder, and Tetra Tech then was hired, and ECC were the two contractors, and they then subcontracted with arborists. And the arborists that they hired were not from this area, and they weren't paying what we would pay arborists, which would be what they are worth, let's be honest. And the arborists, many of them were identifying what a coastline oak as a Chinese elm. And we're going, what? What is
Oh
this?
my goodness.
There were misidentifications. And also, I think there was the direction to be expedient. If it looks like it's going to fail in 5 years, condemn it. And that has probably been the rule for years after fires, but it wasn't going to be the rule in Altadena, and it certainly wasn't the rule in the Palisades either, because David and I both worked together on this. Although he says he plagiarized we were willing to share. We're willing to share our webpage because, we're really here about saving trees. But you are right. So it was essential for us to train these arborists, and so that's what we did. And many of the arborists who worked with us are from all over Southern California. The ISA is the largest chapter of the ISA. The Western chapter of ISA is the largest in the United States, maybe the world, but they'll have to tell you that part. So thank you for asking that, because I think it's really important that those folks who are looking at our canopy and our trees, we are in Southern California and we can irresponsibly grow almost anything. Should we? But no, probably not. But what we have out there, we had stone pines that survived. You saw David's. We have several giant stone pines that survived. We have deodars, we have oaks, we have a huge variety of plants, both native and fire adapted from other Mediterranean regions.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, I am not bagging on arborists. A good arborist is worth their weight. And what I love about your program is you actually train them. You actually worked with them to train them and get them focused in the right direction. So thank you for all that work. You saved a damn lot of trees. Thank you. And what is Altadena? One of its defining characteristics is that suburban forest, right? I mean, that's why people move there, right? And all those poor people that, the houses have been in the families and handed down over generations. They don't have the money, they don't have the resources to rebuild. It's just, oh my God, it's so sad, you guys. Anyway, anybody else have any comments on that?
I was just going to ask also, I've heard that, so just yesterday, Stephanie, thank you very much. We had the lot started to be cleared, and they wanted to cut down some trees. And I'm like, no, I know. And I have my waiver and the whole thing. And they were adamant that the trees were dead. And I'm like, no, I literally had Carl come out hours before, Carl Mellinger. And, we went over the whole thing, and just having that conversation with the arborist, letting them know, the Tetra Tech team, that the trees are alive, even showing them like the cambium, right, like the leaves,
a little scratch test.
A little scratch test goes a long way. And those little aha moments, and I think that was also, it's a beautiful learning experience. But I've been hearing also that they get paid by the weight based on the tags, so I don't, if that's something you'd be able to touch upon.
We're trying to verify that. We're trying to verify that, but we were told by the Corps that there was a different team that tagged it, and then a different team that came and took the trees. But now in this expediency, I think that they have combined, and I think there is a tonnage that they get paid for. And we have been seeing more aggressive of the Tetra Tech arborists bullying people, especially women. Thank God you were just tougher than nails. But it's hard for us to train people to fight.
The other thing we learned is that if there's no tag, they don't get paid for cutting down the tree. So they probably won't cut down the tree. So that's one of the things we were educating Palisadians about, and I'm sure in Altadena too. We would never advocate taking that tag away. We would never do that. But people need to know that.
Yeah, and we have to be careful that we don't incentivize the removal of healthy trees, right? I mean, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate that insight, guys.
And I agree, David, but we also have to be understanding of the fact that individuals need to make that choice of their own and take that risk, because if it was a hazardous tree and somebody else does that, you're assuming the risk that isn't yours to assume.
Exactly.
Anybody else? If I could add my 2 cents on this, so you guys know that I'm a native plant specialist. Most of our landscapes are nearly 100% California native, although I do food areas and, you know, fruit trees and stuff like that. It's actually part of our philosophy too. But what we've discovered, and this was, I think, borne out by the 4-year research study that we did for the US Navy, was that it's actually not very much about plant selection. It's actually about hydration. And for us, the corollary is that it takes so little supplemental irrigation to hydrate a native plant. All right. And you saw in Valeria's photo, I love that contrast there. We saw the bright green native plants next to the not so bright green oleanders. And what is missing from the whole concept here, we got to stop making native plants the boogeyman, plants in general the boogeyman, with a few exceptions. I'm not a big fan of Mexican fan palms. But look at hydration levels. And one of the things that I didn't mention, I used to be an aerospace engineer, okay? I did that for 9 years. So I have a good familiarity with aerodynamics and fluid dynamics and fluid flow and drag and on, you know, turbulation and stuff. And nobody's really looking at the aerodynamics of wind-driven fires. They're so busy. The model, frankly, it's kind of simplistic. The model is this fuel-driven thing, right? And fuel-driven fires, you can use a get around. You can create a defensible perimeter, okay? Wind-driven, well, you guys know what that was like. And especially once the fire is into the community, right? Then you're off to the races, and it's just going house to house. How many of these hedges were burned on the inside, right? On the house side, because I think Sean was talking about that, where the house ignited and actually singed the vegetation, not the other way around, right? So we need to be looking at creating green belts around communities. In our case, we prefer native plants because of the habitat, the beauty, the regional identity, the low water, the low maintenance, and so on. And to populate it with groups, maybe 3 to 5 trees that are set up in a way so that there is overlap as you go down the slope to act as ember catchers, ember coolers, and ember deflectors, and create orographic lift to drive those hot, dry, furious, ember-laden winds in different directions than impinging straight on the community, and to create a defensible zone that a perimeter can be set up by the firefighters and slow it down enough that they can actually get in there and start fighting it at the perimeter rather than once it's inside the community. Okay. And David, you saw the redwood, the Italian stone pines, the red buds, everything you had. You know, your place was surrounded by a green safety zone, a firewall, you know, and the hydration level is, and we did this based on live fuel moisture content, the hydration level is key to determining the flammability of the vegetation. So that's our take on it. Okay. Anybody else have anything to add to that before we move on? Okay, great. Well, and I appreciate what Stephanie was saying.
I was gonna add to that because I think I mentioned in that hillside slope that that was bare, but prior to that, I had been using that as a little, I was trying to get a nursery going, and we had mulched it, we had composted it, we had irrigated it, the week before we were making sure that it was well made, well hydrated. And, from your slow the burn, that area, it burned everything, but nothing like that house is all wood. That's like, there was nothing, so I do think that, maybe the evaporation of it, created what did you say? How do you say that? Oligar lift?
Oh, sorry, that's an engineering term. I'm sorry, just showing up. Orographic lift. That's basically when
Orographic
wind
lift.
gets features, how it's affecting, how it's lifted up and everything.
Like a vortex, right? Basically.
Yeah, kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, and just kind of lifts it and it just redirects,
Precisely. And I think that we definitely saw, feel that from the landscape. You just feel that dewy glow.
Yeah. Well, yes, and what we're saying again in native landscape. So the reason I'm saying we need to do these green belts of vegetation that's hydrated is because ice plant sucks. Ice plant is worse than useless. Terrible erosion control, terrible habit unless you're a snail or slug. Absolutely smooth, almost kind of featureless slope. Burns like hell, by the way. Ice plant, it gets that thatch underneath. And in general, I don't know I'm curious what your guys' experience is, but in general for us, our succulent gardens, often the vegetation would just sort of like melt to nothing. It was like it would vaporize all the moisture off, and we see this with ice plant too, and then whatever was left would burn. So it was the best performers were sort of the evergreen, hydrated, woody trees, shrubs, ground covers. And yeah.
Greg, I'm
What
going
are
to
your
interrupt
thoughts?
here. We have a few quick questions and we're almost out
Oh,
of
sorry. Yes, please.
Oh, so along that point, so I wanted to just to recapitulate what you were saying. So if we could maybe start thinking about defensible spaces, not as getting rid of the plants, but as adding the plants. And the defensible space is actually, the defense is the plants surrounding our houses and our trees, the trees being plants, of course. But anyway, I wanted to add that. We have 3 questions. One is from Dr. Sabrina Drill. She was asking if you stayed or if you put on hotspots or did you evacuate your home during the fires?
For this fire this year, we got the hell out of there, and I think the day before, or maybe 2 days before, looking at the weather report, seeing that it was going to be a Santa Ana wind, I did make sure that the sprinklers on the hill and the whole garden were working, and I think I put them on twice. But so that may have helped. In the 78 fire, I had just bought the damn house, and there was no way in hell I was going to leave the property. And so 3 of us on the block, 3 of the homeowners, we turned on everybody's hillside sprinkler system. So I think that put a damper on the flames. I think it stopped the flame pretty much on the property line, my north property line, and I think that worked. I didn't have time to do that this time. We had 15 minutes to get the hell out of there. I had enough to pack an overnight bag, and that was about it. I saved a couple little things, but we didn't have time. We had to get out of there because we were too close to the origin of the fire, and it was I was that much older, and I couldn't run around with a hose as much as I did in 78.
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Pamela Birschler asks if we can, all of you, maybe Sean and Lee, maybe Valeria, I know all of you will want to talk about this briefly, is how highly complex ecosystems build soil health and water holding capacity and how this results in improved health and hydrated plants. And the other question that I found in the chat was they were wondering about irrigation systems and whether you like drip or spray. I'd like to talk about that. So again, we're really running out of time. So if all of you could hold your answers briefly, but we do want to hear from all of you. Stephanie, did you?
I like rotators, the MP rotators. I think that they, but I also have tried to wean my landscape off of irrigation, and it's supplemental. And I do believe a supplemental, it keeps your plants green and thriving. It requires paying attention. I think what we all have to be is avid gardeners and know what our plants need and pay attention.
You guys, I'm curious if Rick has something on that. He's a chaparralian through and through.
Yeah, Rick, you're muted. There, thanks.
You mean what kind of sprinklers to use?
No, I can talk to that one, but I mean, just in
Well,
general.
and also the diversity of plant material. So instead of just having a few plants, but having a complex ecosystem and how that interacts, or that how that creates diversity. and
Gosh,
health.
I don't know. I mean, I understand the chaparral ecosystem, but I mean, in terms of trying to get it in your yard, it just that's your guys' expertise.
So, do you want me to chat about that?
Yeah.
Sure,
Okay.
Sean.
So back to the whole concept of whole systems, that it's not just the plants, it's my husband, it's not just my husband, it's the roof sprinklers, it's not just the roof sprinklers, it was the fence, and it's the mulch, and it's the soil, and it's the preparations, and it's the response, right? So yeah, diversity is key, and a whole bunch of different species working together, along with I'm sure a myriad of species of soil organisms and fungi working together, play a powerful role in just kind of holding a landscape together. But I will say this, I don't know if the landscape would have survived if I had not run the roof sprinklers and the irrigation system that night. Now, I know that there's a discouragement for some people to not put up roof sprinklers, or to just, leave their house and wish for the best.
No.
And I had many conversations with Rick right after the fire, and many, many before the fire. And I know for a fact that we did everything we could. And the proof is in the pudding at our house, at least, and so the diverse and Lee's house, she didn't have the irrigation system in her garden, except for the trees that were on the perimeter that were burned by the house. That was what did it. Her entire garden is still standing.
Yeah, and what I'd like to say is that the work that we do, the soil building, the plant selection, the whole system approach, putting the carbon in the soil, gives us something that we like to call collateral. And when we hear collateral in our culture, the next word we anticipate is damage. And we say we are working for collateral advantage. And by using the mulch and the fungi, supporting the fungi and putting carbon back into the soil.
Don't forget the logs.
And logs, if you can get them, yes. Capture those logs, use them as nurse logs, use them in hugelkultur, but use them. Don't let them be taken away. Don't let them be burned and go back into the atmosphere. Those trees lost their lives. Let's put them back in the soil where that carbon belongs.
And to answer the question about irrigation, MP rotators all the way, unless of course you're up close to a house, you don't want to destroy the foundation. So if I had drip irrigation running underneath all that mulch, I promise you some of my garden would have lit on fire. So I soaked it from the top down.
And I would add that on my hillside, all of the sprinklers are on galvanized steel pipes, and the risers for the impact sprinklers, about a 30 or 40-foot impacts, they're all on steel, and because PVC burns and melts.
Hey, Sean, about your house with the sprinklers. I mean, my understanding when I came to talk to you, it was the gas line that blew off that blasted the fire into your house, which is why it ignited.
I didn't notice that when we were there, when I was shooting the video and we were taking buckets of pool water from the neighbor's pool, their house was long gone, so I could get right over there, trying to put out the water, and then it just, the house was gonna burn. I started taking videos and I didn't notice until I got, like weeks later, I looked at the video footage and I saw flames shooting out of the gas meter. I didn't even see that.
No.
See, I mean, that's important because you did everything right with the rooftop sprinklers and the irrigation, but there was that one weak point, and that's what fire loves, right? So it was the gas line that got you. It wasn't necessarily because, you know, you did everything right, and that's why it didn't
Fences,
work.
the fence, you know, acting like
Yeah.
a domino effect, and that gas main right there was that side of the house is where when we pulled up to the house at 12:30 in the afternoon, it was that corner that was on fire. We
Yeah.
thought we had a chance, but
Yeah.
there was no chance. It was meant to happen.
Yeah.
But it was the house that ignited the tree. That's what was kind of devastating.
I'd like to add something about drip irrigation. While we sometimes have to use it in specific situations, we've got so much calcium in our water that it doesn't make a lot of sense unless you're dipping your emitters in vinegar once a month and cleaning that out, which is a huge maintenance awareness. And we assume those emitters are emitting as indicated, and they're not. And that's why many of our trees do not have the health that we think we're giving them. We're supporting. So I avoid that if possible. We've found
If I could add something. Sorry, Lee. I cut you off, sorry.
Well, we've found a way to make that work that came out of New Mexico, which is using Oyas and putting the emitter into an Oya. We drill through the side, run the tubing through, put the emitter on, go out the other side. We can cap that so no critters fall in there, and that water is dripping, and that we're still getting calcium in there, but it's not as much as when it's in the soil.
I was wondering if I could just say, you know, I just need to shout out to Rick real quick because I after having followed fuel modification plans and the guise of landscape architecture and, you know, things we had to do when we were working at our, you know, at the firms and whatnot, and none of it made sense. It always bothered me. And so, who's this Rick Halsey guy? I listened to him present one time, and I thought, oh wow, you know, when you just feel in your core like this feels right, and that's what I listen to when I resonate right there in my gut. That's what happened. So I'm just hoping that Rick can share a little bit about just a blurb about what you accomplished recently, like what was the big win, and what does that mean for us?
And
that's what I want to know.
I would love to hear that too. I also want to say we're coming to the end of the webinar. So Rick, can you close us out with that good news?
Sure. I think the most important thing that all of you need to know is I've had quite a significant learning journey about hope and what's possible. And I've gone up and down the staircase on this multiple times to the point of desperation and hope. And, you know, it's like the last 20 years has been like a slot machine for me. I mean, just when I'm about to give up, they give me a few quarters. So I got involved with the Cal Fire situation in 2005. And up until about 5 years ago, we almost had a deal with them, a collaborative deal where they could develop a vegetation management scheme that everybody could get on board with. Newsom got elected, and he ditched all that. And they thought they created a fireproof, bulletproof EIR, environmental impact report, that would allow them basically a blank check to clear millions of acres of habitat in California. Well, they're wrong, and the appellate court said so. And they pretty much excoriated their approach because they tried to obfuscate all of the issues with the environmental impacts of their project, which was basically type conversion, which you may not know about specifically, but it's where chaparral and sage scrub gets converted to another plant community, namely non-native weeds. And so CAL FIRE knew about this. But they didn't want to identify it specifically as a problem because they knew they wouldn't be able to deal with it because all the projects eventually cause it. So what our court win did is it told them, you've got to go back and figure out these treatments and how you're going to prevent destroying the habitat you're managing. And my hope is eventually this will translate into what all of you are talking about, because over time we've been trying to figure out, well, we'll just keep focusing on houses and help people prevent themselves from losing their homes. And we thought CAL FIRE would go, oh yeah, okay, we'll start putting the money there, but that never happened. Maybe it will now. And I just want to end with a caveat. I mean, I've gotten close to giving up multiple times here, but I'm telling you, you just can't. I mean, the national policy for the state, for the national park system was to eliminate all the predators in the national parks in the 1930s. They're not doing that anymore. The Army Corps of Engineers, they straight lined all the rivers in Florida for the most part. And the new generation of Army Corps kids, they go, you know, that was a mistake. We need to fix that. And I think eventually CAL FIRE will get it, and they'll realize, you know, what we're looking at is nature's the enemy. That's not the right approach. We need to focus on saving lives and property, not trying to fight wildfires. And once they get to that new paradigm, a lot of what you've been saying will just explode onto the landscape. So it's really been an honor to be here, and don't lose hope because you just can't give up. Thank you.
How many years did it take for you with this?
20.
Sisyphean
Yeah, it's about
task.
almost a quarter of my life. So it's well worth. The last week's been very fun.
I gotta say, F yeah, man.
Congratulations.
F yeah.
Thanks.
I love also that the judge specifically noted the irony.
Yes.
Yeah, it was really ironic. I mean, yeah, and sometimes, I mean, honestly, we all do the best we can, and CAL FIRE is too. But sometimes you can't see the sky is actually blue; it's not green, and you have to be shaken up a bit. And I think maybe this court case might do that. Hope springs eternal, right?
Yeah, Rick, real quick. How the current regs will change based on the recent court judgment? Will we not have it clear this year? Will it not be clear this year?
Well, we're probably there's gonna be projects that are gonna be suspended, but these current regs, I mean, the problem, I don't want to make an analogy here that's kind of off the rails, but this focus on vegetation, it's like teenage boys, you know, I mean, they can only think about one thing at a time, and that's where this is. I mean, it's this zero zone thing is asinine. I mean, it's all about the plants with some folks, and they don't understand. They eliminate these plants, they clear the landscape, they're making everything more flammable. And until houses and people realize that, that's when it'll turn around. And I don't know when that's going to happen, but maybe it'll have to be a new generation of fire professionals. I don't know, but everybody all the firefighters know this. See, this is the problem. The guys in the offices don't seem to understand it, and the politicians keep passing these laws that just defeat the process. So, and then of course there's money involved, and anyway, but the truth does prevail. It's like the stock market, you know. It keeps going up eventually, and you know, you just got to keep plugging along, and eventually the truth will prevail.
Rick, thank you for showing us what's possible.
Yeah,
seriously, thank you.
Yeah, thank you too from the bottom of my heart, Rick. You continue and always will be my hero. I appreciate the effort and everything you've done.
Well, thanks.
I mean, it's been superhuman, so thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. Really, this has been amazing.
Yes. Thank you all, and thank you to everyone who showed up to watch.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Good job.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a lovely evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We will send the recording.